Hawke's Bay. That's the town of Hastings. And we're looking at the area between Hastings and Napier.
I saw the signs for nature trails all the way to the bottom.
Just to give you a bit of background on this crop that you see in front of you here, it's standard raw gala planted on 106 rootstock. It's planted at 4.5 by 2.5, so about 890 trees to the hectare. There's a lot of work gone into these trees over the last few years to get the big wood out of the top and try and get the crop predominantly carried on good 2- and 3-year-old wood, and where you can see the size of some of these, the butts of some of these trees, that the tree vigor definitely is an issue. This crop behind us will be underway in about 10 days' time. You can see some fruit, just the odd fruit in there that's quite advanced, that may need to be skimmed off prior to that happening. But the main export pick in there will be underway in about 14 days at the outside, but probably about 10 days' time.
They'll have enough size by then?
Question behind me: how many picks of this block? This will be picked at least 4 times, probably 5 times.
All piecework?
Yeah, most of it will be on piecework. It may well be that the very first pick, which is a very light skim, may be done on an hourly rate basis, but because you're moving a lot of tractor movements, it may. Yeah, it's this is very typical of raw gala. The way we're growing it on these bigger trees is that we do get quite a big spread of maturity within the tree, and to get the fruit picked at the ultimate maturity does require multiple picks, which is definitely a disadvantage of this type of system compared to the dwarf system that you'll see further down the track. And the crop on there this year is a very big one. It's big by raw gala standards. The counts that have been done would suggest that crop in there is going to go very close to 90 to 95 tonne to the hectare as a gross crop, and that is a big volume by raw gala standards. Typically we would be down around the sort of 65-70 tonne to the hectare mark. In terms of the New Zealand grower, for raw gala there's a positive return for big sized fruit for the export market. The New Zealand local market really only has a premium if you're supplying it very early, and of course juice is nothing. So the money in the crop is for large size export quality fruit. What we're doing in general in Hawke's Bay to try and work within our means, we would love to be able to afford to be able to take out a lot of these plantings on these vigorous stocks and replace them with dwarfs or a much more intensive system. But most family businesses, in fact most orchardists in general, have not got any disposable income at the moment, so it's very hard for them to do that. So it's a matter of trying to make what you've got work for you. Fuji on 106 on soils like this are a very vigorous beast if you leave them to their own devices, and they tend to be very biennial. They tend to produce a lot of very poor coloured fruit, certainly not what the market wants. Where NZA has basically said that we've got to grow fruit to a minimum 50% colour standard, so it's 50% of the apple with a bold stripe on it. And to do that, on 106 stock, we've got to do some heavy tree manipulation to get the vigour right out of it. This is Pacific Rose. You've probably, I'm sure you've all heard about this variety before. A lot of lessons for us to learn with this variety. It's probably the most biennial variety that we're growing at the moment, so there's lots of challenges to get it to crop consistently. That crop at the moment, it's planted at 4x2, 1250 trees to the hectare. It's in its 5th leaf on 106 stock. Anybody like to guess what sort of gross yield is on those trees at the moment? Anybody? 65 tonne. We've got a 65. Has anyone else got any ideas? Anyone? Probably haven't had a good chance to go in and have a look. It's very deceptive. There's quite a lot of fruit hanging in there, and they are naturally a very big apple. we reckon that there's a crop of 90 tonne to the hectare on those trees behind us, which is very big. So just here, this is Galaxy. You'll all be aware of that. It's a high-coloured sport of Royal Gala. This is Galaxy on M9, planted at 3.5 by 1.5, 1,950 trees to the hectare. It's in its 5th leaf, so the same age as the Pacific Rose on the 106 right beside it. I think you'll see you know, the real benefits of this system. Very good fruit size, very good fruit colour, very easy system to manage. I mean, you guys don't need to be convinced of all the benefits.
Yes, the Rose is a better apple to eat. This is my opinion, sure. I prefer Pacific Queen, but that's as a grower. Pacific Rose is a beautiful apple to eat, there's no shadow of a doubt about that, but it is not very grower friendly, and I think most of you, I assume a lot of you are orchardists that are here today, and it doesn't matter whether you live in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, returns to growers are not very good, and we could really do without cultivars that bite us, and sadly Pacific Rose for us is one of those that has. We have enjoyed good prices on our New Zealand local market over the last few years, but this year, because of the increase in production, a lot of new trees coming on stream, and the crop this year is quite good for Pacific Rose. The New Zealand market, basically, the price to the grower is very poor, so we will have to export. We probably will only enjoy a pack out of somewhere between 35 and 55%, and some guys do it better, I appreciate that, and they may get into the high 60%, but then when you only get a crop every second year, or you get an off crop, it's very, very difficult for the grower to cope with that.
They are marked 9 out of tissue culture, these ones here out of store beds. They are 1 year younger, those ones down there 1 year older. Once again, these are perfectly symmetrical, and with soil line swellings there's virtually nothing. You can see the massive tree variability that's in there. It's not pretty, I don't like it, I'll have to live with it, but 13 years ago that was all we had. We did not have any other dwarfing rootstock or high density rootstock to use in New Zealand.
We were interested in a stock between 9 and 27, which gave better fruit size than 27. We were interested in an improvement on 9, better output, more drought tolerant, resistant to fire blight, etc. Although that, I think all of the rootstock breeders and selectors will agree, is a very difficult undertaking. 9 is a difficult stock to surpass for any breeding rootstock. And we were looking for a replacement for 26, similar vigour, free of burn knotting, better calcium uptake. Replacement for 106 with resistance to collar rot. And what I put at the bottom was something that I've had at the back of my mind for a while, to produce new rootstocks in all these bigger categories, but which are more tolerant to drought, stress and weed competition. The reason I say this is if we move towards more organic systems, then maybe our use of herbicides will be limited. Certainly our use of soil fumigants will be limited against replant. And in our particular area of Britain, the water supplies could well be limited as well. We don't traditionally water our trees.
Overall, I think that the yield you can get over the lifetime of an orchard is still pretty much related to density, and that can largely be explained by light interception. In our case, the yields of low-density systems never surpass the yields of high-density systems, and it argues very strongly for planting high-density systems. There is no big difference between the fruit quality between the densities of the systems, and it's largely because fruit quality depends more on your pruning skills than it does necessarily on density. Profitability, whether we're looking at the long term, over 22 years, or over the short term, was generally higher for the higher density systems. But when systems fail to either get spectacular yields or they fail to fill the space allocated to the trees, then profitability is no better, or in some cases extremely low, and you could lose a tremendous amount of money.
Just schematically, you see here the relationship between the introduction of strong flower buds and shoot growth in different fruit species. And you see here the red line, the sweet cherry. So we need just a maximum length of, or an optimum length of 15 to 20 centimeters to have a fairly good flower bud. So it's not necessary that we have really strong shoot growth.
One of the things then that we are trying to do in taking an approach to this is deconstructing cherry orchard systems. Learning from apples, but also saying there are some things we need to know about cherries. First of all, starting with rootstocks. What are the characteristics of these new rootstocks that we've only had for 10 or so years? Architectural canopy effects. As Terrence pointed out, light interception is really the key when it comes to density, the density of your light interception. So with cherry's different growing habit compared to apple, how might that be influenced by canopy architecture and the light interception question? Pruning, the type of pruning that we do in cherries, the timing of that pruning, all influences not only the foliage, the leaf area, but also whether we're initiating new flower buds or not. How can we take that into account as we're developing our high density systems? And finally, as Michael pointed out, crop load management, making sure you can size up those cherries to hit the kind of market you're shooting for is going to be critical for us, particularly as we get into more and more vigor controlling rootstocks. Let's jump back here and talk a little bit about these three, because these are the ones we're now recommending for further grower tests. Gisela 5 has given us a dwarfing to semi-dwarfing tree, 50 or 60% of its typical Mazard tree. Gisela 6 gives us 85 to 100% vigor. Similar to a Mazard tree, yet it's productive and precocious and has those kinds of good things that the Gisela 5 does, it makes a bigger tree. And as Tony Webster pointed out, the growers that want larger trees but earlier yields are interested in that. Some scientists in some areas have noted that Gisela 6 makes a much smaller tree. Ron Perry and Bob Anderson at Cornell in Michigan have noted it makes a smaller tree. So we're still trying to figure out what the scion and rootstock interaction could be here, as well as the site interaction. But in the West, on vigorous soils, this is our dwarf tree, this is our close to full-size tree. And then Gisela 12 has given us generally a 75 to 80% size tree. Semi-dwarfing, semi-vigorous.
I'm checking his email at the Cyber Cafe in Auckland, huh?
Silently, you seem like ingrowing. Australia. No, they whistle and they go. She's probably still laughing at the jokes we had before. Lovely people, the Australians, as long as they stay in Australia.
Well, it confirms my expectations. These Australians can't tell when an apple's mature either. They want to harvest it 2 weeks early.
I do they can play rugby though.
They can play rugby. Yes, we have to admit they can play rugby.
What do you think, John?
It's pretty good.